A Podcask of Amontillado is a horror podcast, and so we may cover subjects that are not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to another episode of A Podcask of Amontillado, where we delve into the dark, dreadful, and terrifying parts of the world of Vino Atrocitus. Welcome to A Podcask of Amontillado. I'd say welcome back, but it's our first episode, so
Woo!
thank you for creeping down to the catacombs here with us. My name is Gary Mitchell. I'm one of the co-hosts of this show exploring all the dark, dreadful, and terrifying parts of the world, as the intro said just a few moments ago. And with me is my lovely co-host,
Erin McGourn, and I am very excited to be taking part in this.
Yes, this was something that actually our overlord of Good to Be Geek Media, Jessa, my lovely fiance, was like, "Do you want to do a horror podcast?" I'm like, "Oh, I could kind of do it for a horror podcast." And I thought about it, and I was like, I really need a good name, and I need someone to do it with. And just out of the blue, it's like A Podcask of Amontillado, and I was like, "How has no one ever done this before?" And looked it up, and no one ever done it. So now we're doing
That
it.
surprises me.
Yeah, it seems like one of those no-brainer ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So we are, this first episode, going to introduce ourselves and sort of our vision for the podcast and what we're going to be all about. And because you tuned in to hear that and not to hear me ramble, we'll kind of just get right to it. This is, as it says, simply enough, a horror podcast. We want to explore horror in all its forms. We're talking like books, movies, audio media, comic books, strange shadows on the wall. If it's horror, we're interested in it. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, yes, without a doubt. I think one thing I know we have planned is not just media horror,
Mhm.
but horror of the past. And we're not
Yes.
talking true crime or anything like that, though at some point we probably will discuss why we all love true crime the way that we do.
Mhm.
But delving into like the deep dark of why these things actually scare us and why that part of our brain triggers.
And why we watch them.
Mhm.
And so with this episode is kind of, like I said, getting to know us, getting to know each other, our bodies, ourselves, as we've heard many times. And so you have an idea of what we're in for. So we're going to do a question. I'm going to ask Erin 5 questions, and she is going to ask me 5 questions about horror. And we don't know the questions.
Nope.
And so we're going to start in. I won the coin toss, so I get to ask the first question. So, Erin, what horror movie made you realize you love horror?
He's gonna know the answer to this already because he knows me, and
Mhm.
that's without a doubt Friday the 13th, um,
The OG.
the OG, and probably Friday the 13th too, as
Hmm.
much as the first. Because if you're listening to this, I hope you know the difference between the 2. Um, but it was also the fact too that, like, the original, our killer was, like, the nice old lady.
Hmm.
And it was such a twist on what you anticipate for a horror movie.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that entire series is what hooked me.
Hmm.
Um, one of I'll I'll tell you this. One of my very first memories, like, as a child,
Hmm.
is actually of Freddy Krueger. My parents growing up ran adult rehabilitation centers.
Mm.
And at the time, we were living in Brooklyn, New York, and I was probably 3, 4 years old, and, we had a workout room in the building for the guys,
Hmm.
and so this is, like, early '90s,
Hmm.
and they had one of those, like, wall-sized TVs that probably took, like, a crane to get into this building because God only knows how much that thing weighed.
Hmm.
But I can remember my older brother was taking me to my mom's office I don't remember why we weren't with her in the first place, but he
Mhm.
walked us through that. I let go of his hand, and I'm standing there watching Freddy Krueger killing Johnny Depp,
Mm.
and it's that bedroom blood scene.
Yes, the
And
gusher.
I can still remember my mom coming out and yelling at the guys who were in there for not realizing that I was standing there watching this. And it didn't scare
Mm.
me. Like,
Mhm.
I even asked her at one point, like, years later, "Did I have nightmares or anything after that?" And she's like, "No, you slept absolutely fine." So, it's kind of been predestined that, like, horror
Mhm.
was going to be a part of my life.
Mm, so you just watched those and they hooked you and you're like, "I need more of this."
Yep. And
It's
then
like,
getting to delve into, like, all the different kinds that there is
"Oh, yeah."
the abundance of horror is never ending.
No, it's yeah, one of the things that's the one of the good and bad parts about horror, and I'll say that phrase, I'm sure you'll hear a lot in upcoming episodes, but one of the things about it is so many people think it's easy.
Mhm.
It's like comedy horror and comedy are closely intertwined. They're both about timing, and everybody thinks all you need is some red corn syrup, some people who barely know how to act, and somebody in a mask, and you can make the next Friday the 13th. And people don't realize the work it takes,
Mhm.
you know?
Even Friday the 13th zone movies show that.
Mhm,
Um, I recently went back and watched Jason Goes to Hell,
mhm.
I think it is. The soul body switching
Yeah,
one.
yeah, that's Jason Goes to Hell.
Yes. It's
First
a
one I saw in the theater.
oh my gosh, it's atrocious. It it is such a terrible movie, but it's still fun, and I think
Oh, yeah.
that's what we all get out of it at this point, is that, like, they're still fun movies, but it is a
Mhm.
terrible movie, and there's
Yeah,
absolutely
well
nothing scary about it, because none
yeah,
of that timing was there.
yeah. Well, and sometimes a horror movie being terrible makes it better.
Mhm.
'Cause I have watched many a horror movie that was bad, and that's no fun at all, but if it
Yeah.
crosses that line into this is terrible, either
It's so
deliberately
bad, it's so
or
good.
right, it's, like Ed Wood movies. It's like, this is
Yeah.
so bad it loops around again. It reaches a new level. Whereas, the worst thing any movie can be, especially a horror movie, is boring.
Yes.
And at least with a terrible movie, you can at least laugh at it and have a good time.
Mhm.
Like the one that always sticks in my brain, which thankfully I have not had the chance to watch yet, but I will be watching it soon. But I've heard about it a lot. Is Barn of the Blood Llama?
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
it's
that's like
horrible.
Raptor Priest?
Yeah. Oh, Velocipaster?
Velocipaster, I was close.
Yes. That is
Oh
a
my god, it's
cheesy as hell movie.
so terrible.
Well, I have it has a warm place in my heart because Voltaire's in it, who's one of my favorite
Yes, yeah.
musicians. But yeah, it's like, well, and that's another thing is like terrible horror movies are great group things because I watched that movie with a
Yes,
friend. If I'd watched it by myself, I probably would have despised it. But since I was watching it with a friend, I was like, we were having a good time laughing at it.
yes, and I think that's a huge part of it too, is that unbeknownst to a lot of people, like, there is a horror community,
Hmm.
and whether
Welcome.
that's yeah, hi. And so that's one of the things that, like, I got excited about this, and it was the same that, like, working horror fan conventions
Hmm.
is getting to be a part of that community. Because growing up and watching horror movies, especially being the girl, I
Hmm.
was normally the odd one out. And so
Yeah.
it's so fun nowadays to look at, like, my group of friends and see that most of us are horror people.
Hmm. Oh
And I
yeah,
asked
that's
myself how I ended up dating a guy who hates horror movies.
because life loves irony.
I know.
But yeah, that will be one of our topics in this upcoming season is going to be about horror conventions and how to survive them, figuratively
Mhm.
and literally.
Some days.
Hmm.
So do I get to ask you a question
Yes.
now?
Yes, now it's
Yay.
your question.
Okay. What really scares you?
Whew. 90% of the time, it's my own imagination. Like,
Mhm.
when I think about the times I've been truly terrified in my life has been I grew up in mostly rural areas, like trailer parks out in the middle of nowhere,
Mhm.
lots of woods around us all the time, not a lot of light. And for some reason, a single street light is more terrifying than pitch black.
'Cause you expect something to pop up underneath it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And is like one of the memories that always stays with me is was this trailer park. They were clearing out more space into this wooded area for more trailers to be able to put in. So there was like this 300-400 yards of just open space, tree stumps, raw earth. And then down at the end was a little gravel road that went to a section that was already set up.
Mhm.
And there's this, just section of woods where there's some bushes and then the tree canopy. So there's this gap. And I'm walking like from street lamp to street lamp that they've put up, looking into the woods. And I know for a fact that I'm going to turn my head at the wrong point and I'm going to see eyes looking back at me from that black space. And it
Mhm.
takes all my willpower to not just run because I know there's something there.
Oh, yeah, that's old campfire. Like,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. And but for fiction, for movies, the ones that'll get me is when they can really play out the tension of what's coming, but you don't quite know what's coming, like The Thing,
Mhm.
the blood test scene.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like something's gonna happen. And wish I could wipe my brain and watch that again for the first time.
Mhm.
But, even having seen that, 7,000 times because it's my favorite movie, I still jump when the blood jumps. And I think and Carpenter is good at that. Clive Barker was really good about that
Yep.
in the Hellraiser, where someone where they can just draw that out and it's coming and they know just the right point to break that tension with the either, oh, everything's fine, bah, or the actual, something does happen. And just
Mhm.
that's the part where it can get almost unbearable for me. But I think the worst one that that gets me is Argento.
Oh god.
I
Mhm.
am scarred for life by Suspiria. I have never seen the entire movie because I stumbled across it as a kid on cable,
Oh. Oh,
and
no!
I had no idea what was going on. I'm like 12, 10,
Oh my
somewhere
god.
around there, and I'm watching it, and here's this lady, and she gets shoved through that stained glass ceiling,
And
and I'm
that
like,
is such a beautiful scene, like, how that
"Mhm,
was shot, but I can't imagine seeing that as a kid and, like,
yeah."
oh
And no
my god.
context, I just stumbled into
Yeah.
it at that point, so I had no idea. I was just flipping channels, and I flipped away, and then because it was so beautiful, I'd flip back, and then I'd flip
Mhm.
away, and then I'd flip back because I had to see more,
So you
and
haven't seen the remake either?
I have not watched the remake either, but
Okay.
it's on my list.
Yeah, it's on my
Um,
list too.
but I cannot open a door, daytime, nighttime, whatever,
Mhm.
because there's the scene when she opens the door and the lady is there with the knife.
Mhm.
T To this day, anytime a door opens, I'm expecting
Oh, yeah.
mad grinning person with a knife.
Oh, that is such a good movie.
Oh, yeah, Argento he's a master. Um, I loved what he did for Masters of Horror. Jennifer
Mhm.
was beautiful. All of his movies are lush and they're paintings.
That that's just it. It's stained glass.
Mhm,
Like, how he shows color.
mhm,
And that's one of the things that, like and we've gotten a little bit back into it recently where, like, horror for some reason thinks it needs to be dark, like,
mm,
visually. Like,
Yeah.
it needs to be black, it needs to be brown, it needs to be whatever, and then they, like, turn down all the lights.
Mhm.
One of the most recent Predator movies was like that, where, like, I'm sitting and
Yeah.
watching it in the movie theater, and I can barely see what's happening on the screen because it was so visually dark.
Mhm.
But what sticks out are the ones like Argento and Suspiria and all of those where it's like the
Yeah.
colors, kaleidoscope, that's what I wanted.
Mhm.
And yeah.
Yeah, well, Midsummer, the entire movie takes
Oh,
place almost in
yeah.
bright daylight.
It's
Daylight horror is an amazing feat when someone's able to pull it off.
yeah.
Because, like a lot of the times I think they do the night because it's, it covers a lot of it's very forgiving on special effects.
Yes, and we also anticipate bad things to happen at night,
Mhm.
that we're safe in the daylight.
Yeah. Well, like you
And
said
so
before,
when
it's
they
the
can pull it off
campfire.
in the daylight, oh.
Mhm. Yeah, well, like you said earlier, it's that whole campfire thing was,
Mhm.
mankind was designed to operate in two places, in daylight, on land, which is why I love Jaws,
Yep.
because it takes place in
Um,
neither of those times.
The Witch is another
Oh.
good one for they dulled it, but it fit
Mhm.
the time period for that. But
Yeah.
still, almost all of that's done in the light, and
Mhm.
it yeah, it's so
Yeah,
beautiful.
it is. And that's why I like, Guillermo a lot, del Toro,
Oh,
because
yeah.
he is one of those people who appreciates a palette and will
Mhm.
give you those colors, give you those visuals, realize it, because, as much fun as, Freddy ripping somebody's face off is, and it's very fun,
Oh, yeah.
sometimes you want that artistic, and art horror can be art
Oh, without a doubt.
and gorgeous and
A
terrify you at the same time.
Crimson Peak
Mhm.
is without a doubt a prime example of Victorian horror brought to the screen. And his use of color in that over and over and over again, and not just color, but styles.
Mm.
Like, there's one scene in particular where, like, it looks like the snow is bleeding, and, like, his use of red versus white and grays and
Mm.
blacks, it's so beautiful. And then, like, the pops of gold he would throw in for that movie. That's a
Yes.
favorite of mine.
Yeah, we can and probably will spend a whole episode talking about, Mr. Del Toro.
Oh, yeah. He deserves that.
Mhm. Alright, so my next question for you is another a technical one.
Mm.
For you, what separates a thriller from horror?
Oh, that's a really good question. That's almost like, what's the difference between a suspense and a
Yeah.
thriller?
Yeah,
Um,
because I asked because I remember because horror has never been respectable, but it's better than it used to be. But in the
yeah,
70s, 80s, it was the gutter. And so anytime a horror movie did well, oh, it's a thriller.
exactly. But do you know what I think it is?
Mhm.
At least how I can picture it in my head.
Mhm.
In a thriller, you have the expectation that who you're rooting for is going to survive and is going to come out
Mm.
on top.
Okay.
You also have the expectation in most thrillers, not all, but most thrillers, that what you're going up against is entirely human
Mm.
or man made. A horror, you should go into it not knowing if these people that you're rooting for are going to survive or not.
Mhm.
And then a lot of the time in horror, you don't know if what you're going up against is just like the neighbor next door knocking at your door at 3 o'clock in the morning for some reason,
Mhm.
or if it's the ghost that is moving light switches or.
Yeah.
So I think it's horror movies are incredibly predictable, but there are still elements to it that when they're done well leave you in the like, "Oh, shit, I was rooting for that guy and he got killed in the first 5 minutes." Like,
Right.
I think The Hunt does it. Have
Mm.
you seen that?
Um,
It
it's the one where the people are released and people are hunting
y
them out.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of it. Yeah.
So, within the first, like, 5-10 minutes, we meet a group of people, and they're fairly well-known actors, like,
Mhm.
oh, what's her name from American Horror Story? Um, and Scream Queens. Oh god, I can't think of her name. Um, Emma Roberts? Is that who I'm thinking of? I don't know. But,
Carrie Fisher's daughter?
I
Mil
think so.
yeah.
The blonde? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm blanking on her name as well.
Yeah.
The audience is screaming at us, but
Oh, I know. And then, the guy who plays Arrow,
oh, yeah, Stephen Amell.
both of them are in that, and within the first 10 minutes are dead.
Oh, nice. I
And then
love when
you're
a movie does
introduced
that.
to another group of people, and then they die.
Billie Lourd. Billie Lourd, that's her name.
Oh, no, and that's not who I'm thinking of. Oh, it is Emma Roberts. I was
Oh,
right.
okay.
Ha
Oh, okay. Sweet.
Um, but so and I know some people will look at The Hunt and say that it is not a horror movie. It is very much a horror movie. It's just like
Mhm.
The Purge. It's a political horror movie.
Right.
Um, and it's got more humor than The Purge. But it does
Well,
what a lot of horror or what thrillers won't do. And
mm,
that's what it will introduce us to characters. It will get us invested in them and then bam, they're dead.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point because in a lot of thrillers, there are still rules, and you know that, and you
Mhm.
feel that. Where in a horror movie, there are no rules. Anything can happen. Anybody's fair game.
I was gonna say there's still rules, but it's how
Yeah,
those rules are gonna come about.
right.
Like,
Um,
we'll talk about the final girl some in one
yes.
episode.
Yeah, and I also think, I'm always reminded of the quote of what's the difference between erotic and pornographic? And the answer is lighting.
Accurate.
But I think it comes down to intent too, because a thriller, I
Mhm.
think that they're trying to do crime stuff. They're trying to sort of keep you tense, keep you on the edge. But like you said, at the end of the day, everything's going to turn out all right. And
And a
then,
thriller is usually a puzzle
hmm
that, like, you're trying to put together to figure out the end result. Most horrors, like, you have some of the supernatural ones where you get, like, the inklings on who it is or what it is and how to get rid of it,
hmm
but they're not puzzles like suspense and thrillers tend to be.
yeah, yeah, it's like, and the one that I always think of is the big. Everybody back in the 80s trying, or yeah, I think it was the 80s. Everybody was trying to claim that Silence of the Lambs was not a horror movie when
It is
people were talking
absolutely a
about.
horror movie.
Mhm. And there were people like, "Oh, it's gonna be the first horror movie to win an Oscar." And it's like, "No, it's not a horror movie, it's a thriller, it's a suspense, it's a crime." No,
It's
it's
because
a
they
horror
didn't want
movie.
a horror movie to win an Oscar.
Right.
Like, we'll have a
Yeah.
conversation too someday about how horror movie doesn't get the credit
Yeah.
for actors or makeup or
Mhm.
producers that
Yeah, it really
it
does not get
should.
the. Yeah, like I said, it's glad to see it getting some respectability now,
Mhm.
but, when I was a kid, it was the gutter. It was
Oh, yeah.
it was, cheap trash.
It was the movies that stars we know now started in,
Right.
that
And
it
we're
was
like,
the
"Oh
best
god,
they
no,
could
don't watch
get.
that."
Yep.
Mhm. One day we'll talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre: A New Beginning, I think it is. The one with
Matthew
McConaughey and
McConaughey and Reese Witherspoon.
yes,
It is so bad.
it is. But I remember when
I love that one.
when they both hit it big, suddenly that movie was re-released with them prominently on the cover.
Oh, I know, and she was pissed. He didn't care,
No.
but she was pissed. I love it.
Hmm. So,
Alright.
your next question.
What horror do you dislike the most?
Um,
Because we all know, like, horror has its subclasses.
yeah, I am. It almost feels cliche to say this, but I'm not really a fan of the gore for gore's sake torture porn.
That is my answer right there with you.
Yeah. It's like, because I remember being a kid in Fangoria magazine, which was all about the gore,
Mhm.
and I had a friend who that was his thing. He wanted to see as much blood and guts and whatever, and it just made me queasy.
I'm fine with
And
seeing it, I just need there to be a reason behind it.
right, and that's the thing is like because like I said, The Thing is my favorite movie, and that's about as
Mhm.
gory as you can get in some places, but it has a point.
Yes. Mhm.
And and I don't like it when it's like I can't watch real surgery, and I don't like the ones
Mhm.
where it's very, very close to real surgery, and it makes me ugh. So I need a little bit of that unreality, and then I can get into it. But then when they go over and above, now then again, there's a point where you've gone so far that it spins back around to splat stick,
Yep.
and I don't mind splat stick so much because there's some humor there. But the Hostel, which
That's the or, Human Centipede?
oh god, I've not watched any of those movies, and you
Don't.
can't make me.
No, don't. But
No.
you give me, like, a good scene of a person sticking their hand down a garbage disposal and me
Mm.
not knowing if it's gonna turn on or not, that's when I'm terrified.
Oh, yeah, God. Oh, did you see Brightburn?
Yes.
Where he's sitting there and he's got the mower
The
going and
lawnmower? Oh my
mhm,
god, yeah.
that was so tense, and it's like
Yeah.
he's but you still at the back of it, "But is it? But is it?"
'Cause in our head, it's like, "Don't touch it, don't do it, like, you're gonna
Mhm,
lose your hand, I don't care that you're some supernatural being."
mhm. Yeah, and there's a part of my brain and like "Oh my god, the actor's gonna lose his hand, he's gonna shove" like,
Yeah.
no, no, he's not really gonna but there's that little back of the "Ah!" But yeah, that again, that's that tension of what we know is gonna happen.
Mhm.
I love the suspense is terrible, I hope it will last.
But
Yeah, but
that
that's the
hands
stuff that
in
mhm.
garbage disposals and, like, needles going into eyes are the
Ooh,
2 quickest ways to get me to, like, close
mhm.
my eyes and look away from a screen.
Yep, I'm out. Hmm.
No, but
But
I'm
yeah.
right there with you that, like, Hostel movies, even some of the
Mhm,
Saw movies lost me
mhm.
because
Oh,
it
yeah,
just became gore for gore factor, and I'm just kinda like, "Eh."
yeah. And it's like, I thought the first Hostel was okay, mainly because of the
Mhm.
way it subverted and inverted the damsel in distress trope. Instead of a final
Yeah.
girl, we had a final guy. I thought that was clever. I didn't care for the way they did the gore because, again, it was that too real for me. But at
Mhm.
least I was like, "Okay, I can appreciate this movie. I'm not a fan of it, but I appreciate it." And I didn't wanna watch it again. But then when it spawned, every movie was that. That's when I was like, "Oh my god."
The Hills Have Eyes
Mm.
fell into that same where, like, the first one was a good remake,
Mhm.
and, like, it was a fun movie, and then everyone after that was just like, "How much weirder and more hillbilly and gory and incesty could we
Yeah.
make this?" And
Mhm.
it was just like, uh, there's a line, like, "Stop."
Mhm. Yeah, but I agree with you. That first one's good. That director, that French director, Andre Age, I have no idea how to pronounce their name. They're
Mhm.
one of my favorite horror directors. I'm one of the weirdos
Yeah.
that likes high tension. I know so
I
many people hate that movie because of the ending. I loved it.
Oh, no. I loved it.
Oh, yeah, so many people were felt betrayed, and I'm like, "Have you never heard of unreliable narrator?"
Yeah. That's another part of what defines horror, is that,
Mhm,
like, 9 times out of 10 when you go to a movie or you're reading a book or you're playing a video game or whatever form of the media it is,
mhm.
you know what path you're on.
Yeah,
Yeah, stuff might push you off the path from time to time, path might veer, but you know what path you're on.
mhm.
Horror, it's like an Escher painting.
Well, this is a whole other topic, but, From Dusk Till Dawn, it starts out as a Quentin Tarantino crime movie, and it turns into, surviving
Oh,
the
yeah.
vampires. I
So
love when a
good.
movie changes genre like that.
Yep.
We could probably spend a whole panel talking about those. Like, I love it. I just love it. It's like the characters think they're in one movie, and all of a sudden, oh no,
Oh, nope, nope.
you best better start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in
Yes.
one. Ah, so this is a question I've wanted to ask you for a while.
Mhm.
Why are you drawn to Jason? What is it about him that really hooked you? I mean, you have a tattoo. I got you a cool mug.
Mhm.
He's, for a lot of people, he's a big guy with no dialogue, massacring teenagers.
Mhm.
And I say that strictly as a simplifying him down to his
Oh, yeah, no,
yeah,
that's all he needs to be. We can
yeah,
ignore the undead teleporting,
yeah, all that stuff. But what is it?
possibly
Yeah,
deadite.
yeah. What is it about Jason, though, as the character in those Friday the 13th movies that made that franchise and that character so important to you?
I think and it's one of the exceptions to horror,
Mhm.
that we were talking about. Those movies are so fucking reliable
Mhm.
that going into them that you're gonna have, 2 on. You're gonna have this guy in a mask wielding this big weapon, whether it's a machete or a spear or um, a spear gun, whatever.
Yes. Whatever.
Um,
Something with a pointy end.
yes, that he's gonna have this handheld weapon, essentially. The
Mhm.
spear gun is as close as he becomes to mechanical at any point. Um, he's you have him, he has his weapons, and then you have a group of kids,
Mhm.
and 9 times out of 10, it's just the girl who gets out.
Mhm.
And so he follows that formula, and, like, they're always fun, and I think part of it too is that, like, I appreciate that up until the later movies, like
Mhm.
Jason Goes to Hell and ones like that, they didn't care who he was.
Mhm.
Like, he just was Jason Voorhees, and they didn't care, like, how he could keep getting up and
Mhm.
how he could get away, and we all knew who his mother was, but after the first movie, like, she almost never gets brought up again.
Mhm.
Um, it's not until Jason Goes to Hell that they introduce the idea that he has family.
Mhm.
I know there was a plan at some point to introduce his father,
Yep. Somewhere around
and
6, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, and they nixed that. His name was Elias.
Yes.
Um, but they nixed that idea, and I appreciate that, that it's just like, we don't need it. Jason doesn't need it.
Yeah.
And he
Don't go
is
to
the
his camp.
exactly. He is the simplest of horror,
Mhm.
and I think it's just that reliability in him,
Mhm.
and it's a topic that I know we'll touch on later,
Mhm.
but horror movies for me, especially it was me and my mom for the most part, it was an escape mechanism to get away from our abusive household for a little while. And
Mhm.
in those movies, you had this big hulking guy who could overpower just about anybody, but you still had characters get away from him.
Mhm.
And having it usually be a female character who overpowered him and got away, like, that was good for us. And so I say that in terms of him, but, like, I can't fully explain why I love Jason, and I do. I adore Jason. At some point on one of the social medias, we'll post up my tattoo so you all can
Yeah.
see what we're talking about. But I honestly think it's the simplicity of him that,
Mhm.
like, he just is, and he doesn't need to be more than that.
No, he doesn't. Yeah, he so many people wanna overcomplicate him, and that's why I was so glad when we got the Freddy versus Jason movie that we did, because you look at all the failed ones that didn't happen. Like there's one of the script treatments where Jason drives into the town in like a Camaro or something, and I'm like,
I
Jason
know.
doesn't drive.
No,
But
he walks
it's
very
just
slowly and or
mhm,
possibly teleports.
right. But yeah, it's like there are some things they've added that actually did like. Like I'm one of the I like making him deliberately supernatural. When that happened in 6, when they bring him
Yes,
back from the
mhm.
dead, and he switches from crazy deformed guy in the woods to full on I'm an undead, unstoppable meat train of death.
Well, and the director from, um, Jason Goes to Hell will flat out tell you that he is a Deadite,
Mhm.
and the Necronomicon, the
Yep.
actual book from the Evil Dead series is in that movie
Yeah,
because
it's
they
right there in
let
the
him
basement.
borrow it.
Yeah.
So, I'm perfectly fine with him being a Deadite. Like,
Mhm.
that doesn't add to or take anything away from him.
Mhm.
It just
Yeah,
explains
because
why he keeps coming back from the dead.
yeah. Well, and I loved at the last Days of the Dead convention I went to, they had CJ Graham there. And he's in my favorite Friday the 13th movie, which is 6. Kane
Mhm.
Hodder's my favorite Jason.
Of
Yeah.
course, as he should
But
be.
and someone and the audience, there was a panel with the two of them, and somebody asked, if Jason was going to say anything, what would he say? And CJ went, he would say, and held it long enough that you realize
Yeah,
he's like, Jason doesn't need to talk.
no.
Everything he does is you see what you get.
And that's one of the things too that is so interesting about Jason Goes to Hell,
hmm
and it's one of the issues that Kane Hodder actually had with it, is that he tried to get them all to have Jason's,
hmm Mannerisms.
mannerisms. Yes,
Mhm.
thank you. And some of them did it and others didn't, but, like, you can tell what he's thinking. It's
Yes.
like, I don't give a shit that he's wearing a hockey mask, and you
Mhm.
never well, you do see his face a couple times,
Yeah.
but you still know what the fuck that man is thinking.
Yeah. That's why Kane is my favorite and
Mhm.
why you should always hire, if you're gonna have someone portraying Jason, it needs to be either a stuntman or somebody who's done mime and knows how to communicate
Yep.
with their body, because you always know exactly what Jason is thinking. He's either, he's confused, or he's curious, or
Yep.
he's just doing about his business. My favorite is when he's pissed and you can tell he's pissed.
And he just, like, walks through a door.
hmm
Yeah.
it's like, but we'll do a whole episode probably on
Yes, we
Jason
will.
at some point. So yeah, I've got like 8 figures of him within 6 feet of me. So
I still have not found my horror Funko Pops, and I am not happy.
oh, oh, good luck.
I've got a couple boxes left, but I'm like, I need to find those.
hmm
Um, okay, so I'm gonna take your question and kind of turn it back on you.
Okay.
And if there is another one that I am not aware of that goes higher than it for you, feel free to substitute it.
hmm
But what is it about the thing?
Oh, what is okay? So yeah, though that is it. That's the highest.
That's
That's
what I
my
thought that
peak.
was your high
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, like I've said it before, and I'll say it again until people are sick of it. It's my favorite movie, not just my favorite horror movie, not just my favorite John Carpenter movie. It's my favorite movie, period. And it's really hard to pin it down on any one thing because it's so many layers that work together. It's got that incredible score, which sets the mood. You have the it's like at a
Oh, it's
heartbeat at some
Carpenter, of
point.
course, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and, Enrico I can never say the guy's name, but he's the guy who did Ecstasy of Gold, the "do-do-do-do, wah,
Yep.
wah, wah." I mean, the guy knows music, but it's the isolation. You feel isolated with these guys. You feel the cold. Carpenter also does a wonderful setting up of the feeling of space. Like there are a few different times where the camera just moves through the station, so you get a real good idea of, okay, this is here, this is there. It's a real place, not
Mhm.
like a bunch of sets just joined together. One of the things that makes it work is all the actors got together before filming and came up with backstory of like, okay, these characters have been together for months at this point. So he likes you, he doesn't like you. This annoys us that. So they have a relationship when we start the movie. This is
Okay.
we're coming into it of these. This is a real place. It's not like where a lot of horror movies where you come in and you can obviously tell these characters are friends, but there's no real connection there. Like one of
That's
my
why I've
absolute
always
favorite
appreciated the
moments.
ones where they introduce each other. Like, they all meet
Yes.
in the movie because you know that, like, these people don't know each other.
Hmm. But there's the part where Bennings comes out in the middle of near the beginning of the movie to one of the intercoms and hits it and yells at the guy. The cook's like, "Would you turn that crap down? I'm trying to sleep. I got shot today." And the guy goes over
Mhm.
to the radio, puts his hand at the knob, and then just doesn't change it at all. It's like that is an interaction that I buy.
Oh, yeah.
And again, it's just it's very, very grounded because of that. And Stephen King has talked about this. The more real the characters are, the easier it is to buy into the unreal.
Mhm, mhm.
Like, and I've said this before, one of my other favorite scenes is when they're all together trying to debate about what the thing is. And Childs is going, "Do you believe any of this voodoo bullshit?" and is just refusing to believe it. And someone's like, "Well, Rick Reedy, why does it do this?" And he's like, "I don't know, it's different from us. What do you want from me?"
I love that. That's one of the things I always loved about it, is that, like, they didn't know,
Hmm.
and they flat out said, I hate it when and a lot of the, like, paranormal religious horror movies do it,
Hmm.
where it's like, here's a book that explains everything.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I love it when it's just like, "Dude, we have no fucking clue why it can do this."
Hmm. Well, yeah, because in a lesser movie, the Blair would have gone, "Oh, well, obviously it's from this type of world, and it does this as a survival," and would have had a full explanation that everybody would have gone, "Yeah, all right, that sounds right," and that's what it would be.
Yep.
And in this movie, it's like even by the end, they're like they know what it does, but they don't know how, they don't know why, and frankly, McCready doesn't care.
Mhm.
His goal is to kill it and then survive, and kill it comes over survival.
Do you think, because it does what we've talked about before with horror, that do you think the fact that it leaves so much up to your own imagination is part of why?
Hmm. Oh yeah, that is definitely a big part of it. I think so much real horror, like I was talking earlier about seeing the stuff in the dark.
Mhm.
The real horror movies know what you got in your brain is going to be more terrifying than anything they can throw on screen. You
Oh,
know,
yeah, and we'll definitely touch on that when we talk about Eldritch.
yes, but Stephen King talked about in Dance Macabre, which if you are a horror fan and you haven't read it,
Yep.
read it. It's his basically it was his English class on horror, and it's one of his earlier books. But he talks about the fact that about this is like when you hear something pounding on the door, your brain is like, "Oh my god, what could it be? What could it be?" And then you open the door and it's a 50-foot cockroach, and your brain goes, "Oh, thank God, it could have been a 100-foot tall cockroach." But until
And
you
then your
open that
brain goes,
door,
"Ah!"
right? But until you open that door, it's like, "Ah." And that's
Mhm,
kind of the other part of the terror of the thing for me is like you're never sure who is and who isn't
mhm.
until they and eat somebody's face off. Um, so and they play that paranoia very, very well. We're all very tired and nobody trusts anybody anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just rewatched it 2 weeks ago now, I think, and like, okay, now I need to watch it again.
You gotta keep on schedule.
That's right. So this kind of you might notice a theme on this one.
Mhm.
Who would you like to see fight Ash Williams on screen?
Oh. If we can stick to the fact that Jason is a deadite, I mean, like,
Oh.
let's throw him into that.
Yeah.
Um, I absolutely adore Ash Williams. Um, the entire Evil Dead series from the first movie to the TV show.
Hmm.
It somehow manages to be absolutely fucking batshit ridiculous, and yet it's still amazing.
Hmm.
Oh gosh, so who besides Jason?
Hmm. And for everybody screaming at home, yes, we know there is the Freddy versus Jason versus Ash comic book,
Yes,
and
there
it's
is,
not
but
great
this
if you
is
ask
who
me.
I would
But
want to see do it.
yes.
Um, hmm, I'm gonna like, the minute we stop recording, I'm gonna think of somebody amazing. Um, Part of me wants to say, like, Samara from The Ring,
Ooh. Oh, that would be wild. I just see him
right?
kicking her
I
back into the TV.
I can see him sitting down and putting on the movie and then being like, "Huh?" And then it says, like, 7 days later, you'll blah, blah. And then he's like, "Oh, cool. 7 days." And then, like, he just goes and gets drunk.
Yes.
But I'm like, I think that would just be a super fun interaction and to see
Mm.
him beat up a little girl.
Yeah, like I said, I can see her starting to crawl out of the TV, and he just runs up and starts kicking her in the head to go, "No, we back, back, back."
Yep. Um, Maybe Pinhead?
Ooh, yeah.
And I think that's from almost the exact opposite spectrum of, like,
Mhm,
Pinhead's always and the Cenobites are so calculated
mhm.
that it would be interesting to see how they would react to him.
Yeah, because he's pure chaos.
Yes, exactly, and he's gonna treat anything they throw at him with pure chaos, and
Mhm.
so I can almost imagine, like, halfway through it, them just being like, "Dude, this is not worth it. I'm going home."
Mm. Just drop some Cenobites in training. "Look, you guys go deal with him. I'm going to go
Yep.
get some paperwork done."
What about you?
Oh, yeah, it's like that, Samara is a good one. I actually one of my favorite things and what kind of inspired this question is there's a computer game, Poker Night at the Inventory. There are 2 of them, and it's a poker sim, but you're playing in the first game, you're playing with the Heavy from Team Fortress,
Mhm.
Gabe from, Penny Arcade, Strong Bad, and Max from Sam and Max. In the second one, you're playing with Sam from Sam and Max,
Mhm.
Brock Brock from Venture Brothers, Claptrap from the Borderlands,
Oh god.
and Moxie is the bartender.
Mhm.
GLaDOS is the dealer, and Ash Williams.
I love it.
And it's a ball to watch him just sitting there playing poker. And every now and then he's
Yeah.
got the steampunk hand. Every now and then it'll start. It has wonderful dialogue between all the characters. At one point, it starts tapping out Morse code. It's like "Eat your Ovaltine."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like I would actually like this. Now that I've stalled enough to think about it,
Mhm.
for a legit answer, I actually wouldn't mind seeing him go up against the xenomorphs.
Or Predator even.
Oh god, a predator would be better because then
Yeah.
it'd be the hunt on the hunt.
You talk about that, like, order versus chaos. A
Mhm.
predator is such a prime, almost military order
Mhm.
that and then you throw this ball of chaotic energy at him, and I think it would be yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god. Okay, so here's the pitch: is the military once again. It's like they know the predator comes to this spot to hunt every so often. They're setting up a trap, and they've brought in this consultant.
Oh
So
my
you have a bunch
god.
of hardcore
Mhm.
straight-laced military guys for him to bounce off of and to be meat for the machine.
Yep. I mean, it could even be, the guys who show up at the end of the show.
Oh yeah.
There you go. He makes connections with all of those guys.
Yeah.
That mhm.
That would be a ball.
Studios, if you're interested, you know our email.
Yep. We work cheap.
No, we don't.
In
Don't tell them that.
Whose turn is it?
It is mine. What's your favorite form of horror media?
Probably movies. I mean,
Mhm,
I hate to be that basic, but I will love watching a good horror movie. I'll
mhm.
love watching a bad horror movie. I love horror novels. I started with horror novels and comics, which those are both will be topics at some point, I'm sure. Like, God, my like again, 5 years old reading eerie and creepy because
Mhm.
my mother's attitude towards it was, you can read whatever you like, just don't come crying to me if you have a nightmare.
Yeah.
And that stuff just fascinated me. But I also remember one of my great memories is like my 6th birthday. My mom and I, we had just moved to Yonkers and we're sitting on the floor in our apartment eating my birthday cake, watching The Blob on a little 6-inch black and white television.
I love that movie.
It is a ball. I love the remake too.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
mhm. But yeah, I mean, so it's like, I don't know. It's like, and it's always weird because there's some movies, like Suspiria, where I'm like,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of them where I'm just like, like the Friday the 13th. I'm like, yeah, give it to. Which again, I said I don't like gore for gore's sake, but in those, it's different. It's something
Yeah.
different about those slashers. But I'm like, yeah, give it to
And
me. Put
those
it right
got
in my face.
so cut down by
Mm.
the rating regulations, like,
Oh yeah.
they're not even a quarter of what they should be or what they were originally made to be.
Oh yeah. Well, I love the fact they were able to restore. Which was it? 7. It was There was one of them that got butchered, to use a phrase, by the
Oh,
MPAA, and
yes,
then for the
yes.
new Jason box set that Shout Factory put out, which if
They
you
did
don't
a
own it.
director's cut.
Yeah, and they were
Yeah,
able to put all that as much as they could find back in. Or Nightbreed, the same thing. There's that director's cut
yeah.
of Nightbreed, which puts more of puts the movie back in the movie. Um,
Well, and it's one of the things, and I know we've talked about this specific one a lot because I just watched it, but, Jason Goes to Hell, he it
mhm,
was originally over 2 hours long,
mhm,
and he knew it was gonna get cut to hell, so even as they were making it, he said, "There's going to be a director's cut,
mhm.
and it's going to keep all of the stuff that makes sense to me and makes sense to these characters."
Yeah. Yeah, oh, and I love when the director is able to do that, like Romero with Land of the Dead.
Mhm.
He was
Oh
like,
god,
"Okay."
yeah.
Yeah, and they were starting to do some early CG stuff, but he was like, "Okay, in this scene, we'll CGI and some zombies walking in front of the camera to hide the gore, so the MPA doesn't cut it, and then when we release it to video, we'll have
We'll
the
take
director's
that
cut
out.
and then let you see." Oh man! And again, it just brought up another one of the I knew I loved horror movies. As I'm like, let's see, r- uh, the original Dawn of the Dead came out in what, 78, uh, 78,
I think it was later than that,
or was it
or sorry,
81?
earlier than that.
Mm. But when it came out and hit home video, there was
Oh,
this
no, it
nice
was
lady.
78.
Okay,
I
so
thought it was earlier than that.
yeah, so it was either 79 or 80 because I was like 9 or 10,
Mhm.
and it hit home video. And there was this very nice, very friendly, very hippie lady who lived across the street from us. And she's like, "Oh, you like horror? You should watch this movie." And sits me down in her living room on a Saturday night, and we watch Dawn of the Dead, and it's uncut on VHS,
Oh gosh.
and just
Yep.
and,
That's what, one year at Dragon Con, I got to meet the guys who did, Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
oh, fun movie.
And that was one of the movies that, like, as a kid actually scared me, which was very infrequent.
Mhm.
Like, even nowadays, like, I don't get that scared by movies. I'll
Mhm.
get the jump scare, like, "Oh,"
Well, yeah.
moment, but, like, um, but I
Well,
met
that's a
those guys.
reflex.
Exactly. I met those guys and told them that, like, they were the reason I was scared. I still don't like clowns. And, they were like, "Oh, well, how old were you when you saw it?" And I was like, "Oh, I was probably, like, 7 or 8." And they were like, "What?" Even they were like, "You should not have been watching that." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, I know I should not have watched that."
Mhm.
But I did, and I paid for it.
And I know we're planning a, episode on horror for kids, but the part of that conversation is gonna be, okay, what did you watch way too early that you should have?
Yeah, but
Mhm.
Goosebumps is without a doubt, like, Goosebumps and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark
Mhm.
are such formative. That's what I'm not a huge horror book fan,
Mhm.
but when it comes to those 2, especially as a kid, I hated reading as a kid, and that's because, like, I was forced to read what everybody was telling me to read.
Right.
And then some scholastic school book fair, I picked up one of those, and it changed everything.
Yeah. Once you're reading what you want to read, it becomes a whole different
Yep.
world.
But nowadays, it's like there is one horror author in particular who is, like, fairly highly regarded, and I hate
Mhm.
him.
Mm.
Not him, sorry. I don't hate
The
him, I don't
books. The
know
work.
him.
Right.
I hate his books because I feel like every single one ends the exact same way,
Mm.
where if that was a horror movie, like, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Mhm. Oh, well,
I feel
there's
like I have higher expectations for a book than I do a movie.
yeah, well, yeah, there well, in a similar vein, there's this one horror author I'm not gonna name, but everybody loves this person, and everything I've seen about them on social media seems like I love them as a person. They seem to be a great person, but I've read 3 of their books, and they don't know how to end a story, and I did not care for any of the characters,
I'm gonna laugh if it's the
and
exact same author that I'm talking about. We'll
Hey,
talk about
hey,
this
we'll
later.
talk about that when we're not recording. That's not even gonna be an outtake, people. You just
Nope.
have to worry. You have to pin me down at a convention and buy me a drink, and then I'll tell you.
Yep.
But yeah, I was like, I read their a short story by them first because the topic was like right up my alley, and it ends very unsatisfactory. And then there was a novel, and I read that. And again, the same thing. It was like there were some good ideas in there, and it gets to the end. I'm like, wait, what? That's your ending? And then I read another book of theirs, which again, I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool, and there's some good ideas." And then, wait, you're in the okay. So I was like, at 3 books, I was like, okay, it's a trend. It's not.
The one that I am not a fan of has a habit of having some, like, random ass character that you've met, like, once or twice come in and be the one who kills the bad guy in the end. And it's like, never mind what, like, your protagonist is doing this entire time. It's like, why did I just go through all of that? Like, it's
Yeah.
so unsatisfying.
Oof.
But give me a good, like, horror movie, horror TV show, horror video game, horror
Hmm.
board game even,
Yep.
and I'm there.
All of which are coming as topics soon today.
Yes, they are.
Yes. Mm, love a good horror board game. I can't wait for us to talk about those. I just played
Mhm.
Unfathomable 2 weeks ago. That
Ooh,
was a good one.
good.
All right. So, my final question:
Mhm.
what horror movie was too scary for you? Is there any where you had to tap out and couldn't it's like, "Nope, I'm out," or have you
I've
not hit
never
that yet?
tapped out of one because it was scary.
Okay.
I've tapped out because it was bad.
Yeah, well, that's different.
Yeah. I've never met a horror movie that was too scary.
Okay.
I even remember, like, do you remember it's been a couple years now that, like, Netflix came out with a horror movie, and everybody was talking about how it was the scariest horror movie ever,
I think I know
and
the
I
one you're talking about, yeah.
yes, and I watched that, and it was a possession, a
Mhm.
demonic possession one, and I was like, "Seriously?" Like, it was good, but they did such hype about it being, like, the scariest movie ever, and I was like, "No, my horror tolerance is way too high for this." It's like, if
W
you came into that having, like, almost never watched horror movies, I'm sure it was absolutely terrifying,
Yeah, yeah,
but it was
we
just
may
like
be a
any
little
other.
jaded.
I almost wish there was, though.
Mhm,
The horror movies in particular that I find the scariest are the ones that stick with me afterwards,
mhm.
tend to be those demonic horror possession type movies,
There's something about religious horror, because as
and
much as I don't believe in and am irreligious
same.
as it can get, there's still that part of your brain that goes, "Oh, maybe."
And, I mean, like, again, growing up with minister parents,
Mm,
and I still will maybe someday talk about my views on religion. There are
mm,
still things that I believe are real, and there are
mhm,
things that I believe you don't talk about because that invites them in,
mhm,
and I think that's one of the reasons that those type of movies tend to stick with me
mhm,
and tend to leave me a little bit on edge, as well as and it partly, again, probably because I live by myself,
mhm,
and so home invasion horror movies, like, every creak of the house afterwards, I'm like, "What was
mm.
that?" But those are the ones that, like, stick with me, but as I'm watching them, I'm not really scared. It's
Mhm,
the same thing, the imagination afterwards
right.
that gets it. I I honestly can't think of a time recently, at least, like, probably within the past 10 years, I've actually been
Mhm,
scared of a movie.
mhm.
Video game is an entirely different scenario.
I love Resident Evil 2, it's one of my favorite games.
Mhm.
For the remake, I had to s when Mr. X finally shows up, I had to set the controller down and not play for, like, a few days. I
Yeah.
was like, "Nope, nope, 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 nope."
Um, What Lies Beneath
Mm,
is really good. I I can't do that in, like, one go.
mm,
And there's a couple other ones, and they tend to be, like, the psychological horrors that, like, I have to take breaks from. Give me, like, big mean monsters, I'm good. But, like, I've had enough psychological horror in my life
mhm.
that it's like, "Okay, I did 4 hours of this today, I'll come back in a couple days and finish it."
Yeah, yeah, and for me, it's, like, a lot of the Takashi Mike, I always mangle his name, like, Ichi the Killer.
Mhm.
I can't do that. Audition, I've still never watched. Even the trailers and the reviews of it are like, "No, I know it's gonna," 'cause
Really?
it's a little too real.
Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah.
So and that's what with it's my squick button. It's like, it's a little too real. 120 Days of Sodom
Uh-huh.
or a Serbian film.
A Serbian film is rough.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like,
it is, yeah.
and I just know myself, like, those things will plant themselves in my brain, and I will never
Yeah.
get those image and my brain will go, "Hey, that thing you hate, yeah? And I'm
Here.
like,
Yep.
it's like,
It
I worked in a hospital for a year, and there's nothing nurses love more than grossing each other out,
Oh, yeah.
and you remember Rotten.com?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember I would just walk by the nurses' stations, they would have stuff up and they go, "Have you seen this?" And there's a picture of a guy who was riding a motorcycle and went face first into a telephone pole, and all this, for our
Ah,
listeners, like, from his nose down was just red maw, his
yeah.
jaw was gone. That image lives in my head just randomly. Once a week, my brain will go, "Hey, you remember when you saw this?" I'm like, "Yes, God, would you please stop that?"
And
Why?
maybe it's because I started out with, like, the gory slasher things that even those things in, like, real life don't really bother me.
I get way too much. My brain will go, "Hey, you know what this would feel like when you have," and it will just start really like putting that into how would this feel and how would that feel, and
Mhm.
it's just like way too much empathy. And I'm like, no, 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 stop that. I don't need to think about what razor blades going through my tongue are gonna feel like.
Okay, so I thought of a movie,
Okay.
and it is a home invasion movie, and it
Mm-hmm.
probably was one of the last times I was actually scared watching a movie. The Strangers,
Oh.
the original one, not
Mm-hmm.
the 2008 version.
Right.
Um, that was probably, and I think more than anything, again, like, being a female who lives by herself,
Mm-hmm.
that was part of it, and then you add into it that, like, you still want or have this expectation that, like, they're gonna survive,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this absolutely gut-wrenching scene where, like, one of the characters shoots his best friend because he thinks he's the intruder,
Mm-hmm.
and, like, th the acting in it is phenomenal. Like, you actually feel like these could be your friends or it
Mm-hmm.
could be you. There I could see a lot of movies where their interactions could have been terrible,
Mm-hmm.
but the way that they played off these 2 people who are having a rough patch but still love each other and still care about each other, like,
Mm-hmm.
how they do that while going through this horror is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hit the fact of, like, holy shit, they might not make it out alive.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a one scene in particular where she's standing in the kitchen, like, getting a drink or something, and one of the intruders is behind her,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see it, and then by the time she turns around, he's already walked past, and then, like, there's a noise from the other side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
That was yeah,
Oh, and the most terrifying bit in that movie for me is when they finally is like, "Why are you doing this?" Because you were home.
yep. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Again, it's that pure the world is chaos.
Yep. But yeah,
We
that
talk
was
about this a
probably
little.
one of the last times I was scared in a movie.
Yeah. It's like we'll talk about this in the Eldritch horror episode, but the scariest thing in the world isn't that the world might be hostile, it's that the world is indifferent.
Yep. Is that it doesn't care if you're a good person or if
Mhm.
you did the right thing today. It doesn't
Yeah.
care that you prayed to your God today. Uh,
Mhm.
It doesn't care.
Again, it kinda ties into why Jaws is scary, why Jason is
Mhm.
scary, why a lot of any of the movies where it's a monster, it's
It's the
scary because it's
simplicity of it.
mhm, yeah, I admire its purity. You know
Exactly.
it's just killing you because it needs to eat and you're
Yep.
there.
And even that you can put down to, like, a survival of the fittest kind of behavior,
Mhm.
but it it's not even that level of, like, 'cause you were the one who opened your door.
Yeah.
Like, chance, the random
Mhm.
chance is what's scary compared to
Oh.
survival of the fittest or something you could still put a reasoning behind.
Mhm. It's gonna drive me crazy now. I'm trying to think of there was a movie where it was a serial killer who was basically just doing that. They were like picking names out of a hat.
Hmm,
But I forget the exact method they were using, and it's gonna drive me crazy until I think of it. Basically, they were just random. They were just picking completely at random, and that was just terrifying. Might have been Maniac, but yeah, it's the whole completely. I'm just gonna kill you because, and that's why like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, is so terrifying.
yeah, and that's one of the ones that I just pulled up that kind of describes what you were talking about, but I know it's not the one you were talking about.
So, do
Yeah.
you have a question left, or are we
I have one question left.
all right?
Why horror?
It is so hard to really answer that
That's
because,
why I
like I
left it
said,
for
I can,
last.
yeah, because like I was saying before, I have been attracted to horror as long as I have memory. Like I remember being 4 years old, 5 years old, and watching, I think it's Don't Go in the Basement,
Uh-huh.
and, I'm 4. Now, mind you, I'm watching this because my father's, girlfriend's kids are watching me, and they don't give a damn,
Yeah.
and they're, like, 10 and 12, and we watch it, and there's a scene where a baby gets hanged in the closet, and then, like, a few days later, they stuff me in the closet, and they've got a
Oh.
doll hung up in there.
Oh, no.
But, it's so it's, there oh, it's a core memory. Uh, but, I remember the end of that movie where there's this guy sitting there covered in blood, having stopped the bad guys, eating a popsicle and crying,
Uh-huh. That is such a good
and
ending.
it is. And, and then going with moving up with my mom to Yonkers and reading the horror comics, watching The Blob. My mom was a horror fan, and so, like I said, she thought, it's fine. Yeah, I said this earlier. So, and it's just always attracted me. There's that adrenaline rush.
Mhm.
There's that, what would I do in this situation? Would I survive this kind of situation? And just like you were talking earlier with about the Friday the 13th movies, it's an escape.
Yeah.
It's a very good release valve. As horrible as my life is, at least I don't have a psychotic clown trying to kill me.
And it gives your body that natural reaction to release that, where it's like you get that adrenaline push and then that dump, and it's like,
Mhm.
I've never walked out of a horror movie feeling as bad as when I went in.
Mhm.
It's just the beauty of being able to, like, put all of the crap that I'm feeling into a movie and then walking away.
Mhm. Yeah, and so it's like I'm always chasing that terror in a
Mhm.
horror movie or in a horror novel. Um, and then the really good ones, they give you these characters and you care about them and you hope they make it. And if they do, great. And if they don't, sometimes that's great too. Like a zombie movie. I don't go into a zombie movie expecting anybody to survive.
Oh, no.
And ever since Dawn of the Dead, zombies are pretty much my go-to genre.
Mhm.
I love a good zombie story.
A
Um,
good zombie story.
yeah, because again, we've talked about this. Everybody thinks it's easy.
No.
You just put your friends in some gray makeup and fake blood, and it's like, no, you got to give me a character to care about. You got to give
Yep.
me a situation where I hope that they find a way through it.
That's where, as comic relief as they are, that's where the Zombieland movies went right,
Yeah, yeah,
is they focused on who these people are we're riding in the car with
yeah.
and
We
why we
gave a
should
damn
give a
about
shit.
them.
Yep.
Hmm. Yeah, because and this has been said many times, but for any media, the worst thing that can happen is when you go, I don't give a crap what happens to any of these people.
Yep.
That's the
And
death knell.
maybe that's one of the things, especially with, like, the later Jason movies,
Hmm.
that, like, I'm just there for the kills. Like,
Yeah,
I don't give a shit, especially after the Tommy Jarvis arc, like, I
yeah.
don't care.
Well, I mean, there's a reason I think the trope was originally called 20 Minutes with Jerks.
Yeah.
Because like in the first few Friday the 13th, you cared about most of the characters. There was always the jerk, usually the jock, that you were like,
Chad.
yeah, yeah. You always hope they get it, and
Yep.
you fist pump when they die, and then everybody else, you're like, oh my god. And then at some point, they started going, well, we can't kill off the characters people care about, so we'll make them all the jerk, so
Yep.
that we cheer. And Jason becomes the hero of these movies because
Yes.
he's weeding out the gene pool.
And that's one of the things I appreciate that, like, Scream brought back
Yes.
was, and even Freddie did it up in, I wanna say, probably up till the Nancy arc ended, where,
Mm-hmm.
like, you still cared about these characters.
Mm-hmm.
and Scream did it repeatedly. I have not seen the newest one yet.
Yeah, same here. It's on the list.
I still have a hope that because it is Scream, that it's like you can't bring a movie like that back with your 3 biggest people and not kill at least one of them.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so it's like, that's my hope going into this. I love those fucking characters,
Hmm.
and I still have this hope that, like, they're gonna kill one of them just because, like,
Yeah. Well,
that's how
it's
it should
time.
be. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what made as much as I love the first one. I'm not a big fan of the second one, but I still like it. But what
Mhm.
part of what makes that second one work is they killed Jamie Kennedy.
Oh, yeah.
But it was like, oh my god, I can't believe they did that.
Even Scream did a great pull with their marketing, where
Hmm.
you went in to see Drew Barrymore,
Oh yeah.
and then they killed her in the first 10 minutes, and it was like, "Oh, they just did that, no one is safe."
Hmm.
And then they made you care about all of Sydney's friends and, like, made you second guess everybody,
Yeah.
and all those movies are so good.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and again, that's kind of touching back to the reason I love the thing so much is I care about every single one of those assholes, and
Mhm.
almost all of them are assholes.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just like if we don't care about the characters, it doesn't matter what meat grinder they get thrown through.
Mm-mm. Which I think is one of the things with especially, like, the Saw movies,
Mhm.
where it's like, you're just giving me people to watch die.
Right.
Like, I don't care.
Mhm. Because and at least with the Friday the 13th, when they started going into, okay, all these characters are jerks, the final girl was still someone you cared about. And you still kinda gave
Yeah.
enough about the others, and they were creative enough with the kills to keep it interesting. And that's why I like from 6 on, because there's kind of a moment in 6 where they knew what they were doing, and they went full tongue in cheek.
Mhm.
And you can tell the producers and the writers are like, "Okay, we know this is over the top. You know this is over the top. We know that you know. So we're just gonna
So we're just
lean
gonna
into it."
yep.
And,
And that's funny you say that because for a lot of people, that was a mistake.
yeah.
And then you've got, like, a clear divide in that where, like, for a lot of people, that was a mistake, and then for other
Mhm.
people, they were glad it was finally just over that hill.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I mean, when Jason kills the one guy, and I think it might be in 7, it's 6 or 7, when he kills the guy with the blade weed whacker,
Oh,
and
I
I was
wanna
just like,
say
"Okay,
it's
that's."
7.
I think it's 7, but that was for me, that was a point of, yeah, okay, yeah, this is ridiculous. Black& and Decker has a new tool, Jason has to kill somebody with it. And it's a pretty big actor too, it's one of his early roles. He does the voice of Tarzan, he was the killer in Ghost.
I have the picture. It's all of these people talking about, like, interesting ways Jason has killed people.
Mhm. And that's and and again, that's kind of one of the reasons I get pulled back to the Friday the 13th is that creativity. That's one of the things I liked about Freddy versus Jason is Jason was creative again and brutal. Oh my god.
The road flare kill,
Yes.
or better yet, the banana, which is what I
Mhm.
always refer to the yellow sleeping bag that he bangs
Yes.
against a tree,
Oh
like,
god, I love that kill.
New Blood.
Okay. So yeah, that's 7 because 6 is lives.
Yep.
All right. So we've been going for about an hour and saying change now,
Mhm. We have
and we've asked
gradually
all our
watched it get
questions.
dark in my apartment.
So I am really looking forward to what we're going to be doing here down in the crypt.
Me
Uh,
too.
we have
Hopefully,
some,
the occupants can keep it down.
yes. We've got a nice little pile of bricks ready. We got some lovely guests lined up in the future. Thank you all for tuning in. Please share, like, subscribe, write us a review on your podcast platform of choice. reach out to us and tell us why we're wrong.
And join the Discord if you wanna have, like, an active conversation with us, and we're happy to do that.
Indeed. So once again, I am Gary Mitchell,
I'm Erin McGourn.
and we will see you in the catacombs.
Don't get lost. You have been listening to A Podcask of Amontillado, a production of Good to Be a Geek Media. Thank you for joining us. We hope you had a terrifyingly good time. If you did enjoy this episode, please tell your friends, then like, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you would like to support our efforts to explore all the dark, dreadful, and terrifying parts of the world, please join our Patreon, where you can gain access to behind-the-scenes material, backer-exclusive episodes, vote on upcoming topics, watch the video recordings of each episode, and other bonus content. Please visit our webpage, www.goodtobeageek.com/shows/APOA, where you can find show notes, host and guest bios, links, merch, and more. If you have any questions, comments, corrections, or suggestions for the host, please find and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, or send an email to apodcaskofamontillado@gmail.com. We are also part of the Good to Be a Geek Discord. Feel free to descend into the catacombs for a visit anytime. Opening and closing music is Softly Shall You Sleep by Valentine Wolf. Please look them up on your music platform of choice or at www.valentinewolf.com, and that's with an E. A Podcask of Amontillado is a trademark and copy of Good to Be a Geek Media. Logo and show art is designed by Erin McGourn. This episode was produced by Gary Mitchell.
This broadcast is presented in partnership with Good to Be a Geek Media. Let your geek run wild. The opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Good to Be a Geek. To learn more about this broadcast and other shows in the network, visit goodtobeageek.com or find Good to Be a Geek on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at goodtobeageek.